What is up, everybody? Hope everybody's doing well. Welcome to the video on adding and subtracting rational numbers. We're going to talk about fractions today. So hopefully you've already watched part one. That's when we spoke about decimals. And now we're going to be adding and subtracting positive and negative fractions. Everybody's favorite topic in math. So let's get it. So first key term is a numerator, and we also have the denominator. You hopefully have heard of these two terms before. The numerator is in the top of the fraction. The denominator is in the bottom of the fraction. And I would draw this under key terms. I would draw the line to show where the numerator and the denominator are in, so we don't use the words top and bottom too often, and we can actually use the correct terminology of numerator and denominator. So now we are going to add fractions, add and subtract. We're going to follow the same rules as integers, but the difference is with the fraction we must have the common denominator first, and then we're only going to perform our operations with the numerator. So if we're following the same rules as integers, we're only performing our operations with the numerators. The biggest thing here is just finding the common denominator. So we have these negative signs in front of our fractions. That means this is negative 3/4 and negative 1/2. That doesn't change anything about how to find the common denominator. So when I want to find the common denominator, I'm just looking at my denominators. I'm just looking at 4 and 2, and I'm thinking of what is the lowest common multiple between these two numbers. So what can I multiply by to get the same value here? And I can multiply this negative 1/2 by 2/2. Now, reminder, when we find a common denominator, we are multiplying by 1, essentially. Because when I multiply by 2/2, 2/2 is equal to 1. And whenever you multiply anything by 1, it stays the same. Like if I did 3 times 1, that's equal to 3. Negative 2 times 1, well, that's equal to negative 2. Whenever you multiply anything by 1, you're not changing anything. So that's why we're allowed to multiply this fraction by 1, because we're not changing the value, we're just making it look a little different. So if I multiply negative 1/2 by 2/2, I get negative 2/4. So now I have negative 3/4 plus negative 2/4. Once we have a common denominator, put that denominator in your answer. So I'm just bringing my denominator straight over. That is super important because we're not actually adding or subtracting the denominators. Once we find that common denominator, we just put it in the denominator of our answer, and then we're done with the denominator. So now, as I said earlier, is that we're going to do our operations with just our numerators. So now that I have a common denominator by multiplying the second fraction by 2/2, I'm really just doing, if I take my numerators, I can isolate that problem or just write those off to the side. I'm really just doing negative 3 plus negative 2. So we can rewrite it off to the side if we want to, so it's just integers, if it makes it look a little bit more appealing to us. So negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. I'm adding two negative numbers. And so when I add two negative numbers, we keep the sign and add the numbers together. So I'm left with negative 5. So my final answer for this first problem here is negative 5/4. Now notice when I said I was going to do my operation with this whole fraction was a negative, this whole fraction was a negative. So what I did is I kept the sign with my numerators so that I can perform the correct operation here when I did my operation with numerators. So negative 5/4. Now, for me, negative 5/4 is an acceptable answer. You do not have to change it back to a mixed number. But sometimes the test questions or homework problems will ask you to change it to a mixed number, and if that's the case, we do need to do it. Negative 5/4 is really just 5 divided by 4. 4 goes into 5 one time. Subtract 4, I'm left with 1. I have nothing left to divide by, so here's my new numerator, so it's just 1 and 1/4. If we have to change it back to a mixed number, but you do not have to. Improper fractions are okay. Improper fractions are okay because we actually use improper fractions more when we get higher levels in math, and we don't really see mixed numbers very often. Okay, so first thing is get a common denominator. Once we have our common denominator, we're just looking at the numerators for our math, and we can write it off to the side so it doesn't look like a fraction anymore, and then we're done. All right. So for the second one here, I have a subtraction problem. I'm sorry, I'm going to erase this because I need room. For the second one, we have a subtraction problem. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to follow my rules as integers, and I am going to just get rid of the subtraction by using keep, change, change. Okay, I'm going to add the opposite. So I'm going to change this to addition because we always change our subtraction to addition. But if I change it to addition, then that means I have to add the opposite sign. So because this is a negative, this is going to become a positive. So really this is 2/3 plus 3/4. And if we need to rewrite that, we can. Now I'm looking for a common denominator. I don't have a common denominator, so I cannot add these yet. So for this one, for a common denominator, when I'm looking at it, is I'm looking at what's my lowest common multiple between 3 and 4. Well, I know that 3 times 2 is 6. That's not a multiple of 4. 3 times 3 is 9. That's not a multiple of 4. 3 times 4 is 12, which is a multiple of 4. Now, when in doubt, you could always multiply these the two denominators. So 3 times 4 is 12, and you can make sure that, and then that would always work as a common denominator if you need to. So because I'm multiplying this left fraction by 4, I'm going to multiply this side by 4 over 4, and I'm going to multiply this side by 3 over 3. Because 4 over 4 is 1, 3 over 3 is 1, but because I'm multiplying the denominator, I also have to multiply the numerator to make sure it stays equal. So here's finding my common denominator. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times 3 is 9 over 12. Now, my denominator we know has to be 12, and I'm just looking at the numerators. This one's fairly simple because we have no negatives to worry about. It's just 8 plus 9, which is 17. So 17/12 would be an acceptable final answer. If we wanted to change it into a mixed number, it would be 1 and 5/12. All right. Now, we also might have mixed numbers as well. So we might have mixed numbers as well. And the only thing with a mixed number is just change it to improper first, and then you just find your common denominator and follow the same steps as we did before. So change it to improper, it makes life a lot easier, and then we worry about finding the common denominator. Now, as a reminder, to change mixed numbers to improper, we first multiply the base or the main or the whole number in front, the base in front, by the denominator. So I'm going to multiply -3 by my denominator 2, and then afterwards I'm going to add the numerator. So 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So this is going to become 7 over 2, and the whole thing stays negative. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2, I'm going to add that second piece, plus 2 is 5. So this is going to become 5/3. And then we just bring down our subtraction symbol, bring down our negative symbol. So this is really -7 over 2 minus 5/3. Now we're going to follow all of our rules for subtraction, where I'm going to use keep, change, change. I'm going to change this to addition, and I'm going to change this to a -5/3. So I have -7 over 2 plus -5 over 3. Now I also have to find my common denominator, and my common denominator is going to be 6. So I'm really doing 7 over 2 times 3 over 3, and then 5 over 3 times 2 over 2, because that would give me 6 in both of my denominators. So this is going to give me -21 over 6 plus -10 over 6. Now that I have my common denominator, I can really just put aside the numerators. I'm really just doing -21 plus -10. I'm adding two negative numbers together. So because I'm adding two negatives, I keep the sign and add the numbers together, and I'm left with -31. And we know since it's -31, I'm going to put that over 6 because that was my common denominator, and I am done. And again, if it did ask you for a mixed number, you do not have to change these to mixed numbers. Improper is acceptable. But if it does ask you for a mixed number, I would do 31 divided by 6. 6 goes into 31 5 times. So I subtract 30. I'm left with 1. There's my new numerator. So it's -5 and 1/6. Okay, please try this second one on your own. So definitely make sure you hit pause, try this one on your own, and see how you do. Okay, so 1/5 minus 2 1/4. First step is I have to change this to an improper fraction. So this is going to be 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So that gives me 9/4. So I have 1/5 minus 9/4. And I'm going to stop right there for a quick math joke. What do you call two best friends who love math? What do you call two best friends who love math? Algebros. Boom! It's probably my favorite one. It's a good one. All right. Moving on. 1/5 minus 9/4 is what this turned into. So again, we could add the opposite. So I'm going to make this plus negative 9/4 because we don't like that subtraction symbol. Okay, we want to change it to addition, so now we're adding a negative. Now, I need to find a common denominator between 5 and 4, and that's going to be 20. Okay, because if I count by fives, 10 is not a multiple of 4, 15 is not a multiple of 4, but 20 is. So since it's 20, I'm going to multiply the left side by 4 over 4. I'm going to multiply the right side by 5 over 5. This gives me 4/20 plus negative 45/20. Now I can pull my integers off to the side, or just the numerators off to the side. I have 4 plus negative 45. I'm adding two numbers with different signs. I'm adding a positive with the negative, which means I'm really doing some subtraction, and I'm keeping the sign of the bigger number. Well, negative 45 is a bigger number, so my answer is definitely negative. 45 minus 4 is 41. So I have negative 41 over 20. This is also equivalent to negative 2 and 1/20. Always also, we haven't had to worry about this just yet, but always make sure that your fraction is simplified as well. So if I needed to simplify 41 over 20, let's say my answer was 42 over 20, I would always want to simplify in the end. You never have to ask me if you need to simplify. We always simplify our fractions. Okay, and that's it. So hopefully this helped. Remember, common denominator, and then just work with the numerators after that. That's all we have to do. Then we follow our rules with integers. Improper fractions are okay, and I hope this video helped you guys out. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. All right, Gradius out.